So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our event entitled Promoting Leadership Development and Designing Startup Support for Sustainable Blue Economies and Climate Change Adaptation in Africa. My name is Masanori Kobayashi, Program Director, Sasakawa Peace Foundation. We have been working with Africa. The Japanese government also hosted a ministerial meeting this August on African sustainable development. And next year, we will commemorate the ninth meeting of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. We have been trying to support Africa in addressing this ocean conservation, sustainable use in a way that will also integrate climate change, marine biodiversity, food security, and poverty eradication. Just to set the context of our discussions, in Africa, some of the countries have been increasing the fish catch, but at the same time, there are countries that are also losing or the fish catch are declining over the past years. When we look at aquaculture, we also see the different patterns. Some countries are increasing, some countries are actually reducing its aquaculture productions. We are trying to analyze what would be the implications to the Africa's food security. Some countries increasing its fish catch, but at the same time, it is increasing its seafood import. So that actually means that there is a growing seafood trade deficit in some of the African countries. So we try to understand what would be the implications for the food security in Africa. Global communities have also agreed on this 30 by 30 target. African countries are also trying to increase its ratio of marine protected areas against their oceans within national jurisdictions. When we look at the tourism, there is also an important sector we consider as a part of blue economies, but a number of the countries haven't yet restored the level of tourists close to the pre-pandemic level. So this is another challenge. And of course, the port, the shipping, important part of the blue economies, but the port locations that are heavily used for the shipping are concentrated in some of the regions, and we have to see what would be the implications as well. We will also have a representative from the sub-regional organizations speaking later today, and we also look at how the sub-regional organizations, in addition to the regional organizations, can actually support the leadership development, capacity development in Africa in the context of sustainable blue economies. So we try to look at the different policies in an integrated way, and one thing we try to address is that we think this integrated, interdisciplinary, and pragmatic leadership development would be quite essential for supporting Africa's effort in achieving ocean conservation and sustainable use. So with this, I just wanted to invite first three speakers to be on the stage. First, may I invite Ms. Estherine Ressis Forbon to proceed to take a seat on the stage. She is the Director of Agriculture, Food Security, and Environmental Sustainability, African Union Development Agency, AUDA NEPAD. May I also invite Dr. Nyasu Musa, Environment and Climate Change Specialist, Vice President Office, Division of Environment, Government of Tanzania, and then Professor Amin Abdallah, Wide in Charge, Marine Park and Reserve, United Republic of Tanzania, to be seated in front. So may I now invite Ms. Fortabong to tell us about what is a major priority policy target that you are aiming at in the context of promoting ocean conservation, sustainable ocean management, and blue economies, and tackling climate change. Please take a floor.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us to this important event, side event on promoting leadership development and addressing Yes, thank you for inviting us to be part of this conversation on promoting leadership development and designing startup support for sustainable blue economies and climate change adaptation in Africa. The blue economy is of significant importance to the African continent, considering that the blue economy is 3 times the size of Africa's landmass. So it's really of significance for the continent, and it's been recognized in the Agenda 2063 vision for Africa, as well as the second 10-year implementation plan as a critical sector for development. So Africa is at the forefront of harnessing the potential of its blue economy as a vehicle for potential growth. The African Union has developed the Blue Economic Strategy. It has set up some governance framework and an implementation plan. This I'm saying to mention that to give the significance of the political importance that the continent is giving to this question by developing these strategic frameworks. This is with the vision to create an inclusive and sustainable blue economy that significantly contributes to Africa's growth and transformation. Based on this, regional economic communities have also developed regional blue economic strategies. Furthermore, many African countries have designed and are developing their national blue economic strategies. And I think IGA this year, they're having an event tomorrow. We will probably learn more on what the RECs are doing. African blue economy generates a value of about 300 billion today. That's a significant amount of money, and it's estimated that by 2030 we will have 400 billion generated and 600 billion from the blue economy by 2063. So of course, in terms of job creation, we are currently there about 49 million jobs that are created from the blue economy. By 2030, it's estimated that we'll have 55 million. So, of course, these figures and numbers, it's just to demonstrate that this is a sector with significance important to the continent, and therefore much have to be done in terms of supporting what's happening there. AUD and NEPAD, as the implementing agency for the continent, has designed a program that we call Blue Economy for Powering Africa's Growth. And through that program, we have identified 5 critical sectors that speaks to and is aligned to the African Blue Economic Strategy. In principle, we have fisheries, aquaculture, conservation, and sustainable aquatic ecosystem as a key area of focus. We have shipping, transportation, and trade, ports and marine, security and safety, and enforcement as a critical component of the program. The third one is coastal and marine tourism. I'm happy you were giving those figures because it shows these are areas that have potential, but we are not there yet. We need to tap more and develop these sectors. So coastal and maritime tourism, climate change resilience and infrastructure, and sustainable energy and mineral resources and innovative industries, And lastly, the issues of governance, looking at policies and institutions in the blue economic sector. We have prioritized in these 5 key priority areas the issues of capacity building, technology transfer, knowledge management, and investment financing. And this speaks to the topic that we have about leadership development and designing startups. We also have the 100 million SME program that we are supporting implementation, looking at startups. And of course, this is overall, not just for the blue economy, but I think given the design of this new program, we will be giving particular emphasis on startups in the blue economy area and see how we can empower and support them in doing a number of things. I think, namely, we can talk about training is key, very important. We believe for startup, you need to design an ecosystem, not just having one individual trying to start up a company, but see how you can have an ecosystem that brings different types of expertise to support that that startup. You can design programs which we have seen in other areas where you have universities, academic investors, all coming together to see how they can boost this startup. It's also important to have skills and training to improve access to finance. And again, based on the program that we are designed, we will be focusing on that to see how we can support. Building on what is happening in other countries, for instance, in Djibouti, there is a Center for Leadership and Entrepreneurial Training. In Kenya, there is the Blue Invest in Africa that actually supports innovative startups. So there are initiatives that are there. I think what we need to do from the African perspective is to see how we can harness this potential of these initiatives, how we can support them, and how we can bring the political leadership that is necessary to provide predictable environment for startups in the blue economic sector. So we are very happy to be here and to see how we can develop partnerships with institutions like yours and programs like yours to support this. Thank you.
I thank you, Madam Fatong, for your very insightful remarks, and we indeed very much interested in collaborating with African Union, NEPAD, in achieving the sustainable blue economies and ocean conservations, as well as climate change adaptations. So we further look forward to the discussion and collaborations. So I just now ask Dr. Musa to briefly highlight this climate change and its impact and adaptation measures, referring to the example of the policy initiatives by Tanzania. Dr. Musa, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Facilitator. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers for this side event. It has come at a time where COP29 is focusing on financing climate change issues, meaning that we have to move from commitments to actions. We have been negotiating for a number of times, but these negotiations it reached at a point that we need to come up with actions that they really address different challenges, including the economic issues. My concern is on the climate change impact on the marine and the fisheries environment. I think most of you understand that climate change affects different ecosystems, including marine and coastal environment. And among the impact includes sea level rise, ocean acidification. We have also warming of the oceans. Those are some of the climate change impacts. For instance, sea level rise. When there is sea level rise, we expect the seawater intrusion into water, freshwater resources. This affects different economic activities, including health. If the water becomes salt, it means that they need cost for treatment so that it can be safe and become drinkable by human beings. But also we have issue of ocean acidifications. When there is an increase of carbon dioxide into the oceans, it means that the acidity, it becomes too much. If acidity becomes too much, it means that it causes coral bleaching. Some of the fish shelling species, they become bleached and find that most of them, they shift their habitat into different places. By shifting to habitat, it means that the system that depends like livelihood, it means that we lose the economic activity like food security, even the job. Fishers who depend, for instance, on fishing or seagrasses. When there is the ocean acidification, it means that those ecosystems will be impacted. It means that it will affect jobs to those fishers, but also the environment will not be habitable to those ecosystems. For instance, on the issue of warming of the oceans, when the ocean it warms, the different species in the ocean, like fishes, they change the habitat. They move from the warm to the cooler places. By doing so also, they affect different economic activities that have been undertaken in the oceans. Like fishing activities, they become more impacted. If they become impacted, it means that poverty will increase. Therefore, you can see how this scope is very important towards coming up with some interventions that will support the broad economic context so that can address the issue of climate change. The issue of financing. When this impact they happen, they alert that we need to direct our financing support towards the key interventions that may bring effect positively to the community that they rely. For instance, if you can come up with technological support or technical support to those systems that are being impacted by climate change, that I think will enhance the livelihood of the communities and even the systems that are being impacted. The issue of capacity gap, we need also to come up with capacity interventions like technological, that will enhance the blue economy aspect. But also, I want to share what the government is currently doing in Tanzania, because I found from the President office, whereby we develop a number of policies like the decarbonization policy, like the NDCs. We have today at this scope we have some project ideas. We have about 9 of them. One of them is focusing on the blue economy. Tanzania has got about 48.1 million hectares of forests, but 5% of it has got blue carbon potentials. Therefore, you can see these potentials are very important towards building partnership, so that they can promote the various change in terms of climate change that are being affected by communities. Therefore, I thank these organizers for organizing this side event, because it will be a good stand towards exploring different opportunities between Tanzania and Japan or other partners who will come. But also we have got our pavilion here in Tanzania. You can come and we start some negotiations. Our head of delegation is there. You can come and build some partnership there. We can start and come up with the intervention that will enhance the capacity, financial, and also address the climate change impact in the environment and the fisheries sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Naisuru Musa, the Environment and Climate Change Specialist, Vice President Office of Government of Tanzania, for your reference to a number of the impacts of the climate change and on ecosystems and possibly the livelihood. And I'd like to now invite Mr. Amin Abdallah, Warden in Charge, Marine Parks and Reserves, United Republic of Tanzania, as Dr. Musa mentioned, that there are already indeed the adverse impacts on the ecosystems and possible livelihood, and maybe you can also refer to some of the example that parks and its buffer zone area people may be observing or affected by the climate change impact.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Masururi, for inviting us for this very important discussion with the COP. As my colleague said, that we are seeing the impact of climate change. And a typical example, especially in the marine, this year, as you all know, we have a fourth global bleaching event. So most of the area around within the marine park and outside the marine park were highly affected. Corals due to the sea temperature rise. There was a massive coral bleaching. Some of the areas we recorded from 50% live coral cover has dropped down to about 10%. And when this happened, since the fishery is one of the component, very, very important component in the blue economy in Tanzania, supporting over direct or indirect over 200,000 people. And in the coastal communities, and almost around 10% of the population, they're depending either directly or indirectly with fishery resources. So if there is a climate change like what we have seen, a lot of coastal communities, especially those living within the small island and islets, they are highly affected. And this bring about the whole of food security, and how can we as a government and other partners put up initiatives and program that can support and build resilience communities as well as resilience ecosystem to ensure that there is a good productivity of the fishery, but also which it can support livelihood support, create job creation, together with socio-economic development of those areas. So really, though, we have seen that we have now almost come past post-pandemic level of the coastal and marine tourism, but still, due to the climate change effects, we are seeing that the negative impact, because some of those areas which they attract a lot of tourists, they are also been affected. And the community, which are highly, 95% of the fishery are artisanal fishery, they're depending highly on the resources, coastal and freshwater resources. So any changes in the climate change, then it's affected directly to them. And when it affects directly to them, it affects their income and also the income of the country, but also the food security of these people. So what we do is to establish more protected areas and work with the community in order to make sure that we build resilience and protect those areas in order to support their livelihood and sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdallah, for your remarks. And there is a kind of change of adverse impacts of climate change on ecosystem, fisheries, livelihood, and all of these things. Local people really require external support to undertake adaptation measures or mitigation measures. So I just wondered if Madam Patbong, after listening to two colleagues from Tanzania, how can we really approach the local stakeholders and government in taking actions to mitigate the impact of climate change or promoting the adaptations to that kind of climate change? Do you have any supplementary remarks on this?
Thank you. First, I think we, under the context of countries implementing their national adaptation strategies and the NDCs, we have to have, support member states to first have an inclusive process in designing them, where you can have consultations with all the different stakeholders, including the local communities, because I think we don't do that sufficiently. And these communities are the ones that are living the experience. We had a program in Nepal where we had a climate change fund, and we're supporting building adaptive capacities on communities. And one of the beneficiaries were a fishing community in Cameroon. And it was interesting that they might not use the scientific language to describe, climate change, but when they describe the experiences of sea level rise and the need that they needed to go further into the sea before they could get fish, I mean, it really explained their own experience in terms of sea level rise and so forth. I think engaging them, getting their knowledge and getting their suggestions on what could be adaptive measures and the kinds of capacity they need is critical. So both in terms of their knowledge, but also building their capacities to be able to adapt. Working with the different levels of government to also have better coordination, I think is important. Making the linkages with what we do, in the environment ministry on relating to biodiversity, for instance, and ecosystem management, with actions that we have in the NDCs and climate adaptation work is critical. So listening to the colleagues from Tanzania, I think support going to governments as well at all levels to design the strategies, but more importantly, have programs that can support capacity building as well as technologies that can help the communities to adapt better will be critical.
Thank you, Madam Fatong, and it's really important to facilitate this policy implementations in an inclusive and a bottom-up approach as well, as local stakeholders really at the forefront of tackling this climate change and facing impact. So their engagement is really indispensable for successful and effective policy implementations. Maybe I ask Dr. Musa and how actually you can work with the local people to observe this impact and initiate this kind of activities to adapt to climate change. And if you have any aspirations for developing international partnership, I think that would be good to know from you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pastor. Yeah, actually, different countries at this stage, they are promoting transformation adaptations, which they focus on coming up with interventions that should just not build short-term resilience, but long-term resilience to climate change. That's why different countries that are part of the Paris Agreement and the Convention, they got support from GCF to develop NAP, which is a process of NAP process. For instance, current Tanzania is developing its NAP and is doing vulnerability assessment. Vulnerability assessment covers 9 sectors. One of it is coast environment and the marine resources. This assessment will come up with evidence-based information that will support planning by coming up with adaptation interventions that will enhance communities in coastal areas to build resilience to climate change. By developing the NAP, I think international communities now can come in. That's why GCF is providing funding so that we can come up with interventions that are informed by science-based information through the vulnerability assessment process. The vulnerability assessment also involves the communities. If you just end at the policy level without reaching the communities, I think the intervention that will come up, I think, will not help communities. Therefore, the NAP process will ensure that the local communities are taken into account so that we can come up with community-driven adaptation interventions, which I think the international community can come in and build the partnership so that we can build our resiliency and adapt to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musa, and then may invite Mr. Abdallah about what are the kind of actions you think very important to cope with these climate change challenges and promote sustainable blue economies or supporting livelihood of the communities, particularly in coastal areas?
Well, thank you. There are a number of initiatives which we can do, and also we are doing. One is looking on the nature-based solution to climate change, and we introduce and try to promote like a seaweed farming, and in order the community to be more engaged, not only for sake of just doing a seaweed farming, but also to support the livelihood, but also seaweed farming being one of the nature-based solution also to for climate change adaptation. So this is kind of those program which we have introduced, but also we are working with local communities, build the capacity to do what we call it restoration programs, both in terms of reef restorations as well as mangrove restoration, in order to build that resilience of the ecosystem, but also the community that can enjoy the product which is coming out of those. And also in the land, what we have introduced and try to promote a lot of aquaculture programs in order to ensure that the community, they produce more fish, because with the climate change, as my colleague said, now the fishermen, they are reporting that they have to go far. And even those seaweed farming, they used to cultivate on the intertidal water. Now they have to go in more deeper waters in order to make sure that they are not affected with the increase of water temperatures. So all these programs, and most of the time we sit with the community and talk to the community and discuss with them, and the solution has to come from the people in order to be really implemented and be very successful and sustainable. So we talk to them and we listen what they're saying, and we can come together and produce or design a program which can support the community involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdallah. And we indeed need to work together with community people, and this impact, sea level rise, as you said, that people used to catch the fish, but now they have to far away, and the seaweed they no longer able to cultivate because sea level has been rising, and these impacts, I think we have to create an enabling environment for the local stakeholders to tackle, and for that, like organizations like AU, NEPAD, government have to play a role in ensuring that there will be an enabling policy environment, and indeed like organizations like ours will be useful partners for the community stakeholders.
Thank you. Looking forward. In fact, we are here discussing all those issues, but also to build a partnership and collaboration with within the country, but also with other stakeholders along the globe, in order to make sure that, because the climate change impact is not just in one country; it's a global. So we have to think locally, but also we have to think globally, but also act locally, in order to ensure that we tap the knowledge, the local and traditional knowledge which is there, and also tap this knowledge transfer and capacity building from outside, in order to make sure that we blend them together in order to go further.
Okay, thank you. And I think we really had a useful discussion on this policy and the institutional side. Can you join me giving a big round of applause to the speakers in the first segment? So next, I would like to invite the next group of speakers to tell us about more regarding the activities undertaken at the field. May I invite the second group of speakers to be on podium. First, I'd like to invite Dr. Eshute Dejen, Program Manager, Sustainable Environment and Coordinator, Blue Economy, Agriculture and Environment, IGAD, to speak, to be followed by Mr. Fabian Shanika. Can you also come forward? Managing Director, KELP Group, And then we have a colleague, Ms. Evelina Kostianaya, ECOP Program Global Coordinator, Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. So yeah, Shete, so can you tell us a bit about what you have been trying to help these East African nations in coping with climate change and promoting sustainable blue economies?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting IGAD for this side event. IGAD is one of the regional economic community. It's in Eastern Africa that address 8 member states. And IGAD is the most vulnerable region in terms of climate change. In IGAD, the impact of climate specifically on terrestrial is mainly addressed by our IGAD Climate Prediction and Adaptation Center, where our colleagues from Tanzania, even if they are not member of IGAD, more countries are benefiting from this climate prediction center that helps us to predict what's going on in terms of flooding, in terms of rainfall. This is one of the area where it helps us to adapt and to get climate service. Specifically, when we come to blue economy, as Madam mentioned, as one of the 8 regional economic community, IGAD has developed regional economic strategy for blue economy, where it's addresses based on the continental framework. And in this strategy, we clearly identify climate adaptation and mitigation measure as one of the interventions in terms of the fishing community. Our Climate Prediction Center provides mainly for agricultural, pastoral, and agro-pastoral area. We have identified the gap for fishing community in coastal area to provide climate service. So this year we have, with the support of African Development Bank, we are trying to establish Center of Excellence for Blue Economy Climate Service, where the fishing community will get information ahead of time, whether there is flooding, whether there is some sort of El Nino or other issues, so that the fishing community will address. And also we want to establish climate insurance. There is climate insurance for crop and livestock, but there is no climate insurance for fishing communities. Climate insurance will be one of the area, and also we are trying to do some sort of intervention in terms of rehabilitation of the mangroves and other areas, and also environmental service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishet, for sharing with us your IGAD work, and it's interesting to know this early warning information for climate change and insurance that is suggested now for the fishery in the context of climate change risk management. Now I would like to turn to Fabian Shanika. He's CEO of the Kelp Brew, and he has a fascinating video that we wanted to show you, but you can Google it and people can see it on the YouTube. May I invite Fabian to tell us about how you are dealing with this climate change impact and possible adaptations to climate change in the local community.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Fabian Shanika, Managing Director of Kelp Blue. We are a private, or I represent private entities. We're a private company based in Namibia, and a lot of what I'm going to speak about is actually what we're doing in the field. 4 years ago, I think in the quest to really combat climate issues. We looked at seaweed, specifically a species called giant kelp, and we started cultivating this. Currently, we've got under cultivation about 40 hectares, fully installed. We've got a license area of 6,400 hectares off the west coast of Namibia. Specifically, why Namibia? Obviously, because of the rich Benguela current. I do probably, there's probably only a few people in the room that's slightly older than I am. So I've been around a little bit long. And one of the things that I do clearly remember is on the coastal towns of Namibia, growing up, there was quite a lot of fishing activity. And I think one of the graphs shown earlier on did show the decline. So climate change is real. And one of the direct implications to that is that we've seen the fish stock decline. And as a solution, I think, is to diversify how we see the blue economy. Historically, Namibians look at fish. So we're now employing kelp as a solution. We harvest the kelp, and there's different pillars to it. The one is obviously restocking the ocean by increasing the biodiversity. The second one is obviously kelp sequesters carbon quite greatly, so there is a carbon credit component to it. And then the third and the last one is really the product that we produce. We produce organic fertilizer that can be used by farmers to replace effectively what is chemical fertilizers. And I think really a key point for me is in terms of just how the actual operation is doing, it was very important for us to take a very ecosystems view to how we solve this problem. We've got three pillars that we're resting on. One is education. We've got a private school that's called the Blue School. And the idea really is we need to inculcate a culture of young kids wanting to go into the blue economy. That's the first one. The second one is really around the research. I mean, as a lot of you probably know, there is still a lot of gaps in our understanding around carbon sequestration. So that work is going on. We've got an entity called the Kelp Forest Foundation. And then the third one is obviously the commercial entity. And the key point there is you can't rely on grant funding forever. So if you have got a nature-based solution that gives you positive cash flows, or well, not necessarily positive from day one, but that gives you cash flows right at the start, I think you've got a winning recipe. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Fabian. And it's really fascinating to hear that you're creating this credit from the kelp farming. And in Japan, we've been also trying to do. And for that, we are adversely affected by the seawater temperature rise. So there are a number of risks, and I hope that we can discuss a bit more about your project and how it can possibly replicate it to other parts of Africa as well. It's interesting to note that you're applying kelp as organic fertilizers for agriculture, so linking ocean with land. That's another interesting aspect as well. So now I'd like to turn to Dr. Eva-Gina Costanania, Eco Program Global Coordinator and the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC UNESCO. She will tell us how you see this leadership and capacity development and maybe startup support, maybe from the project activities that you have observed so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this question, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this panel. So I coordinate a UN Ocean Decade endorsed program called Program for Early Career Ocean Professionals. We were endorsed in 2021. We have more than 6,000 members, and we have really nodes and activities all around the world. And we have a lot of interest from Africa from the start. So capacity development, as you can imagine, is one of our main pillars, as capacity development is one of the main priorities for the youth and for early career ocean professionals. So we are doing several things in this dimension. In 2022, we co-organized online trainings for ECOPs, so early career professionals in Africa. So we were supported by the IUC UNESCO and the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. So there was an open call, and this was a very interesting thing. So it was an open call, and stakeholders, organizations, institutions in Africa could apply for this funding from NORAD. They could come up with really any topic that they would want to have this training for ECOPs. And surprisingly, the topics they came up with were mostly on ocean governance and blue economy. So it means that blue economy is really something that is of great demand for the region. So the topics that we selected were, and the trainings that actually happened were on youth and skills for youth for blue economy in Africa. And we keep hearing that there is a great demand for trainings on blue skills, on blue economy, on blue startups, and we especially hear that in the context of Africa. So we continue to provide trainings for ECOPs in Africa. We did also 2 online trainings with cooperation with Ocean Teacher Global Academy for ECOPs in Africa. They was absolutely free. We did it twice. That was on oceanographic data analysis and management. So it was online. It was absolutely free for ECOPs, and the demand was overwhelming. The program could select only, I think, 50 or 60 participants, but the number of applications that came from Africans were about like 500, 600 applications. So it was far more that the actual course could accommodate. And then our recent development is the Knowledge Hub in Malta for Northern Africa. And this week we are having our first in-person training again on oceanographic survey techniques and data analysis. And early career ocean professionals from Northern Africa participate in that training right now this week. So I know that there's really a lot of things that we still need to do, but I think that it has been really successful, and we will do certainly more. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Evgenia, for sharing with us, particularly the program related to youth empowerment and training program. I also wanted to recognize Professor Amor Zakaria Hamouda, IOC UNESCO of Egypt, and maybe it's good that if you can make a short comment, 1 or 2 minutes. Can you pass the microphone to him?
It's my pleasure to be here with you, and I think all the partners will be have good information about each area. So what we are looking for, we needed, as you know, the government of Africa, he don't have a good facility to support for, don't have a finance. So we needed a program from IOC or for the building capacity, especially for the fishermen, about all the people which live food along the coast. It's very important to establish a program for the building capacity, support these people and support the village along the coast of Africa. And we have also a high impact of the climate change related to effect about the diversity and the rate of the production related to change of the temperature, and also related to the change of the habitat of the marine. So we needed to assessment and understand what is going on about this environment. This is a scientific research, so we needed assessment, research to evaluation, what is the problem, what we have on the ground, so we can understand what we needed for the building capacity for this area. So we needed 2 programs, one for assessment to understand what is going on of each local area. Is different, the evaluation of the local is different exactly from the regional study. So we have a many problem along local area along Africa. especially for the pollution or especially for the climate change and the effect of the diversity. So we needed two programs. One program for assessment for the scientists, other program we needed the building capacity for the people there who need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hamuda, for sharing your views that it's indeed very important to assess the situations and the impacts, and that will be an important basis for policy interventions. We had this example in Namibia, and I just wanted to turn to share again that how the IGAD can actually build on the good practices, such as the one in Namibia, and how you plan to promote these sub-regional corporations in IGAD region.
Thank you very much. Really, it is a very good coincidence. Tomorrow I have a discussion with World Bank for seaweed. We have similar event in the afternoon at 2 o'clock in IGAD pavilion. So you are also invited to get more insight in terms of blue economy, climate resilience in the Horn of Africa, which is a very hot spot. But when it comes to my brother from Namibia, in IGAD region we have a very poor experience in terms of seaweed. From November 26 to 28, we are going to have knowledge share fair in Djibouti, as we were discussing with Madam Easton. We are inviting, Tanzania is a good model. We are inviting the seaweed entrepreneur from Tanzania through AUDA and EPAD intervention to show for the people there, Eastern Africa. You know, we have Somalia, the largest coastline, more than 3,000 kilometers. But we are suffering from food insecurity. Therefore, I will take the lesson with regard to the seaweed and scale it up in IGAD region. So I will I will take the details, and this is a very good opportunity for us. The other issue, we did some sort of capacity need assessment for IGAD region in terms of blue economy at different level, from the community up to the government level. Your organization is very good on that, and I think it's a good opportunity to work together. We'll discuss later. So thank you very much for connecting us.
Thank you. So Fabian, you know, if countries in other regions would like to study your project and see how that can be replicated to the regions, what would be the caveat that you may want to bring to their attentions? And of course, there are different stakeholders who may have a different interests. How do you deal with these different stakeholders who have a different interests, and this marine spatial planning, interest coordination may be probably vital in the undertaking that you are promoting? Any additional remarks on this?
Yeah, I think in our case particularly, because we are particularly looking at scale. Scale is very important to us. If we are going to sequester carbon, it has to be at scale. And with that comes a few challenges. The one is really the land use complications that comes when you're working at scale. Typically, marine activities happens in coastal towns. So just the clash between sort of the transportation, fishing, and then you want to come in and do something like seaweed. So it is really, really important to make sure that you are aligned from day one. You remain transparent to each and every stakeholder. But more importantly, and maybe there are some government officials here, more importantly, it is important that it is underpinned by a very strong regulatory framework. We fortunately do have that in Namibia. We've got this environmental law that really, no matter how long your project is approved for, we've got a 15-year license, but every 3 years we have to resubmit our environmental certification. And I think that's quite a really, really valuable tool to keep each and every player over that same area honest, and it works perfectly for us.
Thank you. Very important. Yeah, okay, I see the hand up, and yeah, I just wanted to see if we can take one or two questions or comments. Can you try to brief and yes,
Okay.
please.
Good morning. My name is Lamin Esongo from the Gambia. Well, we have so many problems, and I believe I have a lot of questions, but due to the time constraint, I will just keep it short and precise. In my country, the government currently is having a lot of businesses with the Chinese. I'm from a fish landing site. I am from a coastline community. We are trying to do a lot of protections to our marine life and the biodiversity, but from the side of the government, more money is coming, and it is changing everything for us. So as grassroots organizations, we want the technical capacity and the education to protect our environment. One, there are a lot of sand mining in our coastline. The new road construction and everything is all coming from the coastal communities. The projects that are going in the Gambia are all sand mined from the coastal communities. From there, we really realize that we are having a lot of seaweeds, like you are saying, and sea cells. They are coming. And these sea cells are also mined by the indigenous of the community, selling it out. They make it as a business, mining sea cells. So like right now, somebody coming from a fishing community, there was a time like 2-3 years ago, boats will come with a lot of fish to a point that even if they give this fish out, they sell it out, they still have remaining. Sometimes they will even have to dig a hole and bury it. But when these Chinese companies come with the fish meal, fish is not enough for anybody in the country again. People from the coastal community cannot even afford it because Chinese are buying it at a higher price. So we have a lot of damages at our marine and our ecosystem. Recently, we start protecting the dolphins and the marine turtles. We already have agreement with the government that anyone caught killing dolphins or marine turtles will have to go to court. So we are young, we are called Molo Association, and we are trying to protect our marine life and the biodiversity. Some of us did not have this environmental background from education, like the university and all that. So that's why we are here, to network, to partner, and see how we can protect our community and the biodiversity, because we are losing everything to the bourgeoisie.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Maybe one more point from the floor, then let us conclude.
Thank you very much. My name is Zawar Al-Kharousi. I'm from Zanzibar, the government of Zanzibar, Tanzania. And I'd just like to ask you, Fabian, I think, a very quick question with regard to kelp and fertilizer. How is fertilizer coming from kelp being accepted within the market? Because breaking into the market can be a challenge. And then in terms of like the benefits that are coming from the, we farm seaweed a lot, and we can talk later in Zanzibar. We are the #1 producers in Africa. Now the question is, is it worth it if you venture into the fertilizer industry?
Okay, so maybe fertilizer issues.
I'll try and sort of work it backwards. In terms of what you would want to produce in the end, I think it's horses for courses. Our type of kelp grows very fast. It's giant kelp or microcystis. We've done various analysis, and you can use it for so many things. But I think a lot of you know about CBAM as an example, and it affects 4 or 5 core industries. And as a result, we have focused on fertilizers. It is one of the industries that are affected. So talking about the market, we've got registration about 3 days ago in all European Union countries. So the market is, I think that's sorted. I think it's more moving towards back towards the production. We need to scale. That's really important. But I think to answer your question, I think it's horses for courses, because seaweed is called multitude of uses, and you need to pick the right objective for what really works for you.
Thank you, Fabian. And, we indeed had discussions with New York Times journalists about your Gambian issues and this conflict of interest with different stakeholders, including those from overseas. I think these are the challenges. Maybe we can have a chat afterwards. So before we conclude, we wanted to invite Madam Fortabang to tell us a bit about the reflection of our discussions and maybe future perspectives. Can you get the mic?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chris. It's been a very rich discussion. from the first panel and this panel, seeing country experiences and regional experiences. I think hearing from all the conversation, we need to balance. I mean, the blue economy presents a lot of opportunities, but we need to balance both livelihood issues as well as ecosystem management issues. So that whole concept of sustainability is critical in terms of building resilience of both our communities and their livelihoods, as well as ecosystem services and management. I think for me that's coming out quite strongly. The second point I hear so much is about local solutions. We operate in a global environment, and meetings like this are so important, where we can share experiences with each other, we can build partnerships. But all of that is to be able to make sure we have positive impact at the level of the communities. So I think that message has come out so strongly. The third point is about capacity building. I think we've heard a lot of it, strengthening adaptive capacities of communities, as well as our institutions at national level and regional level. So the importance of having clear strategies at continental, regional level on the issues of blue economy is critical, but translating those at the country level where we have, whether it's the national adaptation programs and strategies, whether it's the NDCs, but also having specific management plans for the fishing communities and the Ministry of Fisheries is important. So the institutional frameworks are key and the policies are key, and they have to be relevant in terms of building resilience of communities and the ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Fatabong, and let's work together. And it's good that we reinforce our mutual understanding and the partnership for tackling climate change challenges and promoting sustainable blue economies, and in order to improve the livelihood of the local stakeholders around Africa and possibly the world. Let's join me in giving a big hand of applause to the panelists. Thank you. So can I invite the speakers to be on the podium to take a group photo, and maybe Professor Hamuda, please also join us as well.